I think my water just broke, I whispered to my husband, Nathan, in the soft darkness of our bedroom. The clock on my nightstand read 3:17 a.m. Are you sure? He asked, instantly alert, throwing back the covers. I nodded, a mixture of excitement and fear washing over me as a contraction tightened across my abdomen. This is happening. We're having a baby today. What should have been one of the happiest days of our lives turned into a medical emergency that no one saw coming. After 12 hours of labor, my blood pressure skyrocketed, and I was rushed into an emergency C-section. Complications followed, and what was supposed to be a 2-day hospital stay stretched into 2 weeks of recovery, while our daughter, Lily, spent her first days in the NICU. Through it all, Nathan was my rock, splitting his time between my hospital room and the NICU, sleeping in uncomfortable chairs and existing on vending machine snacks. The only reason he went home at all was to shower and gather fresh clothes. The house is a bit of a disaster, he admitted on day 3, looking sheepish. I haven't exactly had time to clean up. I don't care if there are dishes in the sink when we get home, I reassured him, squeezing his hand. All that matters is bringing Lily home safely. What neither of us anticipated was that his parents, Robert and Helen, would take matters into their own hands. They had flown in from Phoenix the day after Lily was born, ostensibly to help. Initially, they'd stayed at a hotel, visiting us at the hospital and bringing Nathan home cooked meals. When my complications arose, Helen had suggested they could tidy up our house to prepare for our eventual homecoming with the baby. Just basic cleaning, she'd promised. So you don't have to worry about anything when you finally get to bring our granddaughter home. Nathan had gratefully handed over our spare key. It was a decision we would both come to regret. On the day we were finally discharged, Lily healthy and thriving despite her early challenges, me still moving slowly but healing. Nathan brought the car around while a nurse helped me into the wheelchair hospital policy required for departure. I cradled Lily in my arms, marveling at her tiny features and the wisps of dark hair that matched my own. Ready to see your home, little one? I whispered, kissing her forehead. The drive from the hospital to our 1920s craftsman bungalow took 20 minutes. We bought the house a year before getting pregnant, charmed by its character and history. I'd spent months carefully restoring original features, hunting down period-appropriate fixtures, and filling our home with furniture and art that complemented its vintage charm. Much of it came from my grandmother's estate: Persian rugs, antique bookshelves, and the heirloom cradle that had been in my family for generations. As we pulled into our driveway, I felt a flutter of excitement. After 2 weeks in the sterile hospital environment, I was longing for the comfort of our cozy, character-filled home. Your parents' car is here, I noted, seeing their rental SUV parked on the street. They must be waiting to welcome us. Nathan nodded, a strange expression crossing his face. They texted that they had a surprise for us. Knowing my mom, she probably made enough casseroles to last until Lily starts kindergarten. He helped me carefully out of the car, then gathered Lily in her carrier. I moved slowly up the front walk, still sore from surgery, leaning on Nathan's arm for support. When we reached the porch, the front door flew open to reveal Helen's beaming face. "Welcome home, new mommy and daddy," she exclaimed, stepping back to let us enter. "Wait until you see what we did." The moment I crossed the threshold, I froze in confusion. For a disorienting second, I thought we had somehow entered the wrong house. Nothing, absolutely nothing, looked the same. Where my grandmother's antique oak console table once stood in the entryway, there was now a white laminate shoe rack. The warm gold walls I painted myself had been redone in stark clinical white. The vintage Persian runner that had graced our hallway was gone, replaced by some sort of modern gray area rug with geometric patterns. "Isn't it wonderful?" Helen gushed, misinterpreting my stunned silence as awe. The whole house was so dark and old-fashioned, totally unsafe for a baby, so we brightened everything up. I stepped further into what used to be my living room, my heart pounding painfully in my chest. My restored Victorian sofa with its rich, emerald green upholstery was nowhere to be seen. In its place stood a beige microfiber sectional I didn't recognize. The built-in bookshelves that had housed my collection of classic literature and art books now contained minimal decor. A few bland canvas prints with inspirational sayings, some generic vases, and a scattering of mass-produced figurines. Where are my books? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. And my grandmother's sofa. We put all that dark, dusty stuff in storage, Robert chimed in from the doorway to the kitchen. Helen read, the antiques harbor all sorts of allergens, not good for the baby. Nathan stood beside me, Lily's carrier still in his hand, looking as shocked as I felt. Mom, Dad, what exactly did you do? Helen's smile faltered slightly. Well, we started with just a bit of cleaning, but then we noticed how depressing everything looked. All those dark colors and heavy old pieces, it was like a museum in here. So we called in some professionals. Professionals? I echoed faintly. Home renovators, Robert explained proudly. They worked around the clock to get everything done before you came home. Cost a pretty penny, but our granddaughter deserves a modern, safe environment. I moved through the house in a daze, each room revealing a new horror. My carefully curated vintage kitchen with its restored cabinets had been gutted, replaced with generic white units and gray countertops. The nursery I'd spent months perfecting, with its hand-painted woodland mural and the antique cradle lovingly restored by my late father, was now a sterile expanse of pale pink walls and brand-new furniture that reeked of chemical finishes. Where's the cradle? I asked, my voice breaking. The one my father refinished. Oh, that rickety old thing. Helen waved dismissively. It wasn't up to modern safety standards. We got this beautiful new crib instead. It converts to a toddler bed later. I stood in the center of what should have been my daughter's nursery, tears streaming down my face. The cradle that had held 5 generations of my family, that my father had worked on in the last months of his life knowing he wouldn't live to see his grandchild, gone. Replaced by something soulless from a big box store. This isn't right, Nathan said firmly, finally finding his voice. Mom, Dad, you completely overstepped. We gave you permission to clean, not to renovate our entire home. Helen's face fell, genuine confusion in her eyes. But we were helping. Everything was so outdated, so impractical for a baby. That outdated furniture included family heirlooms, I said quietly, struggling to maintain composure. Things that can't be replaced. It's all in storage, Robert insisted, though he now looked uncomfortable. Except for a few things the workers might have. Well, there was some damage when they removed the built-ins. My legs gave out then, and I sank onto the edge of the unfamiliar crib. Nathan quickly placed Lily's carrier safely on the floor and came to my side. I think you both need to go back to your hotel now, he told his parents, his voice tight with controlled anger. We need some space. But we thought we'd stay here now that there's a proper guest room, Helen protested, gesturing to what had once been my home office. The pull-out sofa you had in there before was terrible for Robert's back. Nathan closed his eyes briefly, visibly struggling to remain calm. Not tonight, Mom. Please. After they reluctantly left, promising to return in the morning when we're less tired and can appreciate all the improvements, Nathan held me while I sobbed. Lily mercifully slept through my breakdown, unaware of the chaos surrounding her homecoming. We'll fix this, Nathan promised, stroking my hair. We'll get your grandmother's things back, replace what we can. But the damage went beyond furniture and paint colors. This was a violation of our home, our autonomy as parents, and in many ways, a dismissal of my family's heritage. The message was clear. The home I had created wasn't good enough for their granddaughter. That night, we slept in our bedroom, now an unrecognizable space with new furniture and bland decor, feeling like strangers in our own home. I nursed Lily in an uncomfortable glider chair that had replaced the antique rocking chair my mother had used to nurse me, and I cried silent tears that fell onto my daughter's downy head. The next morning, Nathan called his parents and asked for the storage unit information. He was direct but firm. They had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. They needed to understand the gravity of what they'd done. But we spent over $50,000 on these renovations. Robert protested when Nathan explained we would be undoing as much of their work as possible. We didn't ask you to, Nathan replied steadily, and we certainly never gave you permission to throw away Emily's family heirlooms. The following weeks were a blur of sleepless nights with a newborn combined with the stress of trying to recover what we could from the storage unit. Many items were damaged from hasty packing, and others, including my father's handcrafted cradle, were simply gone, likely discarded by the renovation crew. Through it all, Helen and Robert remained convinced they had done us a favor. They continued to drop by unannounced, using their key to let themselves in despite Nathan's increasingly direct requests for space. They brought more unwanted baby items, criticized my breastfeeding schedule, and commented constantly on how much healthier the house looked now. "Your style was so depressing before," Helen remarked one afternoon while I was struggling to soothe a colicky Lily. "All those dark colors and heavy furniture, it's no wonder you had such a difficult pregnancy." Negative energy. I bit my tongue, too exhausted to argue, but something inside me hardened. This was my home, my child, my recovery, and they had steamrolled over all of it without a second thought. The breaking point came when I discovered them in our bedroom one day, replacing the remaining photos of my parents with framed pictures of themselves. Lily should see her living grandparents, Helen explained without a hint of remorse when I asked what they were doing. "All these pictures of dead people aren't healthy for a child." That evening, after they left, I sat Nathan down for a serious conversation. "This isn't working," I told him, Lily sleeping peacefully against my chest. "Your parents are not respecting our boundaries, our home, or my family's memory." Nathan sighed heavily, the strain of the past month evident in the dark circles under his eyes. "I know, I've tried talking to them, but they genuinely don't understand what they did wrong. In their minds, they were helping. Helping doesn't involve throwing away irreplaceable family heirlooms," I said quietly, "or making us feel like guests in our own home." We talked long into the night, weighing options and consequences. By morning, we had a plan, one that would either reset boundaries permanently or fracture family relationships beyond repair. Either way, something had to change. First, we changed the locks. Then Nathan arranged for his parents to come to dinner the following evening, telling them we wanted to properly thank them for their generosity. Meanwhile, I made a reservation at a nearby hotel and prepared a folder of information. When they arrived promptly at 6, shopping bags in hand containing yet more unsolicited baby items, they found us waiting on the front porch rather than opening the door. "Is something wrong with the house?" Helen asked, confusion crossing her face. "No," I replied calmly, Lily securely strapped to my chest in her carrier. "The house is fine, but you don't live here anymore." Robert's bushy eyebrows shot up. "What are you talking about? We never lived here." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "Because you've been acting like this is your house since we brought Lily home. You renovated without permission, you come and go as you please, you rearrange our belongings, and you criticize everything from our furniture to our parenting choices." Helen opened her mouth to protest, but Nathan cut her off. "Mom, Dad, we love you, but what you did was wrong," he said firmly. "You destroyed Emily's family heirlooms, you disregarded our wishes completely, and you show no remorse whatsoever." "We were trying to help," Helen insisted, her voice rising. "That old furniture wasn't safe for a baby. That old furniture included the cradle my dying father restored for his grandchild," I said, my voice. But Robert was leafing through the folder, his expression thoughtful. "Helen," he said slowly, "maybe we should have asked first." "Asked?" "About improving their home for our granddaughter, making it safe and modern instead of that depressing museum." She turned back to us, her voice sharp. "Fine. Lock us out, but don't expect us to keep financing your lifestyle." Nathan blinked in confusion. "What are you talking about? You don't finance our lifestyle. Who do you think paid for that fancy hospital room? The private ICU nurse?" she challenged. "We've been helping you financially for years." I glanced at Nathan, who looked as bewildered as I felt. "Mom, I never asked you for money for the hospital." "We have insurance." "Your father called the hospital and upgraded everything," she insisted. "We paid nearly $30,000 to make sure our granddaughter and daughter-in-law had the best care possible." Understanding dawned on Nathan's face. "You did that without telling us, just like the renovations. More decisions you made for us without our knowledge or consent." Robert at least had the decency to look embarrassed. "We were trying to help," he said, his voice softer than his wife's. "We had the means, and we wanted the best for all of you. Help isn't help if it's not wanted or needed," I said gently, seeing an opening for genuine communication. "And it's certainly not help if it comes with strings attached." Helen opened her mouth to argue further, but Robert placed a restraining hand on her arm. "Let's go to the hotel, Helen. They need space, and frankly, so do we." "But," "No, Helen. For once, let's listen to what they're actually saying instead of what we think they need." The look of shock on Helen's face at her husband's words might have been comical under different circumstances. Without another word, she turned and marched back to their rental car, slamming the door with enough force to startle Lily awake. Robert lingered a moment longer. "I'm sorry about the cradle," he said quietly. "I didn't realize its significance. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was a start." "Thank you for acknowledging that," I replied. After they drove away, Nathan and I went back inside our still unfamiliar home. We stood in the living room, surrounded by beige walls and generic furniture, both physically and emotionally exhausted. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" I asked, gently swaying to soothe Lily back to sleep. Nathan wrapped his arms around both of us, creating a small island of family in a sea of unwanted change. "I don't know. But I do know that we did the right thing tonight. Our home, our family, our rules." Over the following months, we gradually reclaimed our space, repainting rooms in warm colors, retrieving salvageable antiques from storage, and hunting down replacements for what had been lost. Some things, like my father's cradle, were irreplaceable, but we honored his memory by commissioning a local woodworker to create a similar one that could be passed down to Lily's children someday. As for Robert and Helen, they stayed at the hotel for 3 days before flying back to Phoenix without saying goodbye. The silence stretched for weeks, then months. Nathan reached out several times, each message met with increasingly brief responses. 6 months after the confrontation, a large package arrived at our door. Inside was a vintage rocking chair, similar to the one that had been in my nursery, along with a letter from Robert. "Nathan and Emily, I found this at an estate sale and thought of you. Helen still doesn't understand why you were so upset about just furniture, but I've been doing some thinking. My mother had a china cabinet that I remember from childhood. Nothing fancy, just a simple piece she was proud of. When she died, Helen insisted we didn't have room for it, and I let it go to a cousin. I've regretted that decision ever since. What we did to your home was wrong. We should have asked. We should have listened. I can't bring back the things that were lost, but I hope this chair might be a small step toward healing." Helen isn't ready to apologize yet. She still believes she was right, that as grandparents we have certain privileges in our grandchild's life. I'm working on her, but it may take time. In the meantime, I'd like to visit, alone, if that's all right with you, to meet my granddaughter properly and see the changes you've made to your home. With love and regret, Dad. We invited Robert to visit the following month. He came alone, as promised, and spent 3 days getting to know Lily, now an active crawler with a ready smile. He admired the changes we'd made to the house, nodding appreciatively at the blend of modern safety features and vintage charm we'd managed to achieve. "It feels like a home now," he observed on his last evening with us. "It didn't before, not really. It felt like a model home, perfect but soulless." He hesitated, then added, "Helen chose all the renovations. I just wrote the checks." "That doesn't absolve you," Nathan pointed out, but without rancor. "No, it doesn't," Robert agreed. "I should have stood up to her, asked you what you wanted instead of assuming we knew better." Before he left, Robert helped Nathan hang a gallery wall in the nursery, photographs of my parents and grandparents alongside pictures of Nathan's family, including Helen, a complete family history for Lily to grow up with. "I'll keep working on your mother," he promised as we said goodbye. She misses Lily terribly, even if her pride won't let her admit she was wrong. It took another year before Helen was ready to visit, and even then she couldn't quite bring herself to apologize directly. But she arrived with no shopping bags, asked before picking up Lily, and visibly bit her tongue when she noticed we'd replaced her chosen nursery furniture with safer but still vintage-inspired pieces. "Your home looks nice," she said stiffly, as close to a compliment as she could manage. "The colors are certainly bright." I smiled, bouncing Lily on my hip. "Thank you, Helen, we like it." Later, I overheard her talking to Nathan in the kitchen. "I still think we improved things," she insisted in a hushed voice. "But I understand now that we should have asked first. It wasn't perfect, but families rarely are. What mattered was that boundaries had been established and, however grudgingly, respected. We had reclaimed our home and our autonomy as parents, setting a foundation of respect that would shape our family dynamics for years to come." The most meaningful moment came during that visit when I found Helen sitting in the vintage rocking chair, gently singing to Lily as she drifted off to sleep. For a brief moment, our complicated history faded, and I saw only a grandmother bonding with her granddaughter. She looks just like Nathan did, Helen whispered, her finger caught in Lily's tiny grip. I wish I could have seen that, I replied honestly. Helen hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small photo album. I brought these for you, Nathan as a baby. I thought, perhaps some of these could join your gallery wall. She paused, then added softly, all of Lily's family should be represented. That night, after our guests had gone to their hotel, no longer banished there but staying of their own accord, respecting our space, Nathan and I added Helen's photos to the nursery wall. Our home continued to evolve, as homes should, but now every change was ours to make, every addition a conscious choice rather than an imposition. The damage done in those early weeks couldn't be completely undone. Some treasures remained lost, some hurts still tender. But in their place grew something perhaps more valuable. A hard-won understanding that true family support comes with respect, that love without boundaries isn't love at all, and that a home is more than just a collection of objects. It's a sanctuary shaped by those who dwell within it, a physical manifestation of their values, histories, and dreams. As we settled into the restored rhythm of our lives, I often found myself in Lily's nursery, rocking in the chair Robert had found, surrounded by the faces of generations past and present. In those quiet moments, I would whisper to my daughter the stories behind each picture, each piece of furniture, each color on the walls, ensuring that long after I was gone, she would understand that this home had been created with intention, protected with conviction, and filled with a love strong enough to weather even the most well-meaning interventions. Your home is your story, I would tell her softly. Never let anyone else write it for you.